Beyond the titles and any achievements, who are you really?
So essentially, the guy behind the face here is, quite a stubborn, strong leader person. And I always had to, work myself up from the ground level all the way to the top. Connecting anything finance related to operations is and was extremely difficult. It was all thumbsuck guessing. He automated huge chunks of the operational system, huge chunks. I'm talking about probably 75% of it. The problem was that it was so automated that it also caused bloat.
We don't have time to stop and to do it, but then we're losing a lot more time later on if we don't do it.
On the money. I think you're nailing it.
Okay, hello everyone. Today on the Big Growth Show, I have an absolute pleasure of welcoming Wiehan Britz. Wiehan is the CEO of Magnet Monster, and if any of you doesn't know what Magnet Monster is, and I'm sure like most of you know, Magnet Monster is a leading email and SMS marketing agency that's redefining how businesses engage with their customers. Right, Wiehan?
That's correct. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting about everything ranging from the wins, the not so good, and all the fun bits in between. So thank you so much for having me.
Amazing. Well, with over a decade of experience in digital marketing, you have worked across a variety of marketing disciplines. And today, together, I would like to be diving deeper into the world of agency operations specifically. I'm super excited to have you. And I am going to dive deeper into your experience and insights on running a high performing agency, also scaling operations, and I think everything in between is quite important as well. So you can welcome to the podcast, and thank you very much for being my guest today.
Awesome. It's going
um
to be great to chat and unpack everything. And I hope people out there will learn from my experience. So looking forward to it.
yeah, absolutely. So I already briefly presented you, but if you had to describe yourself in your own words, beyond the titles and any achievements, who are you really? And maybe if you can tell me as well, what are the defining moments that shaped you into the person sitting here today?
That's a fun question to unpack. I like it. Look, we always talk about this on me and my wife. Now, different personality types, this particular model that we tend to study focuses on the tree types. So you are a rose bush or a palm tree. That just indicates, the type of personality you have. Your traits. Are you humoristic? Are you a socialite? Are you a stubborn leader? So I fall into the rose bush category, rose bush palm, or they call it rose palm. So essentially, the guy behind the face here is, quite a stubborn, strong leader person. I'm that guy that, I would lead the army, in front, take all the battles on. I've got battle scars. I'm quite tough skinned in that regard. I think
Yeah.
it's just because over the years, I've been in, quite difficult positions in terms of career and the likes, and I always had to, work myself up from the ground level all the way to the top. And with that, a lot of, challenges were brought my way, and that just gave me the thick skin I have. And yeah, I mean, just throughout the years, I've learned how to operate, making, very difficult decisions, sticking to my guns, really helping people, also being a great team player, which of course helped me to evolve from just being a specialist and implementer to being a operational person to being the CEO. So yeah, those are kind of my traits and how I see myself. And I'm also a father behind the scenes, love the kids, nature guy, just love everything that's outside of work so we can leave our phones for a bit and leave Slack behind. So that's me.
So, considering what you told me, I'm very interested. If we go back to the beginning, what pulled you into start working for agencies? And as you're saying that you have thick skin. Did that play any role in wanting to work for agencies or going and choosing any other businesses to work for?
It's a good question. I've funny enough, so I studied for 4 years back in the day,
Mhm.
and my very first job, well, apart from being a paper boy and being a waiter, my first real paying job, corporate job, was actually in the agency environment. That's where I made my start. And you're talking now 15, 16 years ago. Back then, I started in the SEO field, general digital marketing. So that has been my first introduction to agency. So I worked in agency probably for 85% of my career. So it's not a brand new transition, into agency.
Yeah.
But I have also dabbled in, working in house, working for myself and the likes. Now, agency life, for people that aren't aware of how agency life operates in the back end, it is definitely a beast in itself.
Yeah.
There's so many strings to keep intact, tons of decisions to make, a lot of context switching, processes to follow, adhere to, a lot of people that need to play the same game, communication and the like. So I've always been in the space, but the beauty is I've always been the guy that's doing the ground level work, getting my hands
Mhm.
dirty, being in the seat with all the implementers and specialists. So I've gone through all the pains of that part, where I'm now more in a leadership role. So I do have great sympathy and knowledge into the ground level. If you want to call it ground level, you get what I'm saying. The
Yeah.
implementers, the people doing the daily stuff. So as an operational person, CEO person, I understand the challenges they're going through. So I think that helped me tremendously with my transitioning into a leadership role within the agency space.
Very interesting. I actually want to get you back to the few days at the beginning when you started working at Magnet Monster. And what was the reality back then? Obviously, you mentioned that you had a lot of experience before that, but what were you walking into?
Now, I prior to Magnet Monster, I've never been in an operational position. Up until the very first day I started, it was brand new territory for me. Like, hey, all of a sudden, guess what?
Interesting.
You're going to be in charge of running with operations. Now, of course, luckily for me, I've worked with operational people and processes and systems, and I'm quite good when it comes down to workflows, processes, frameworks, implementing those things. So it wasn't as if I was completely lost at sea. It's just
Yeah.
all of a sudden I'm now taking charge of that. And I need to get people's buy in. And I need to, like, everybody's looking at you, having to fix things, plug things, improve things. And if it goes pear shaped, people are looking at you like, wow, okay, you said we're going this direction. Where in the past, prior to Magnet Monster, it was you just do your job and there's a management team and it's kind of their problem if things fall through the cracks and things aren't working. Where at Magnet Monster, it was a complete 360. The one thing that I think a lot of new leaders struggle with, and I also struggled with it to some extent, is the amount of ownership that gets put on your shoulders is so much bigger than just being an implementer, because you get involved in finances, you get involved in hiring, recruitment, you get involved in legal stuff, processes, workflows. But people being bad employees in that regard, how do you work around that? People being good employees, how do you encourage them, how do you incentivize them? So I wasn't prepared for the dynamicness and the vastness of the role, and it was quite a shock for me, but I took it on. And 3.5 years later, here we are. Here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's been such a journey. I'm actually here a question pop up in my mind. So, as it's been very new for you and you're joining as a COO, what were the few foundational challenges that you faced, and Did you make any changes since you started, or it took some time until you get familiar with what exactly the role is, and then you start introducing your maybe ways of working and streamlining operations and everything in that sense?
I think some of the hardest things I had to work my way through, and some of it we've plugged, we've put in place, some of it's still work in progress, some of it will never really get to a finished state. I think the one thing is to ensure that all the parts of the agency, A, I've got good knowledge into them, B, they are accurate, and C, they can all work together. And a good example is finance. Connecting anything finance related to operations is and was extremely difficult because it touches so many things. It touches time tracking. Are we underutilizing our people? From a cost point of view, from a time point of view? Do we need to hire? Do we have budget to hire more? Expensive resources that could
Yeah.
bring in, that can work on bigger projects, on more difficult projects. Extremely difficult to close the loop on what the finance says and all the indicators on the finance end compared to what we need to do on operations, because I found in the beginning it was all thumbs up guessing. Like, hey, I think we need to hire another engineer because the engineer is telling me that he's overworked, he or she's overworked. So to me, that seems like we need to hire. So that was the very first challenge I had to face is what gives
Mm.
me the indication to hire, let people go, to promote, to scale up. Those things were extremely hard. So that's on the one end, is connecting all those pieces. How did we put it in place? Just better systems, just being more accurate with our numbers, consolidating stuff, making things accessible. I think that's one of the hardest things is making finance things and workflows and everything accessible. So I don't need to go through hundreds of documents and steps and folders to access something because that's draining. And then on the other side of things, automation. We've always had a huge debate around how much of this can we automate. So when I stepped into Magnet Monster, and Andrew, the co-founder, he automated huge chunks of the operational system, huge chunks. I'm talking about probably 75% of it in
Mm.
Trello back in the day. The problem was that it was so automated that it also caused bloat in the system. Sorry, Andy, but it caused bloat because now you've got all these triggers going off, notifications. The timing of it is wrong. It doesn't leave room for manual intervention, and if you need to do it
Yeah.
manually, you just add to the bloat, and it becomes a huge pain in the ass. So I had to also navigate that part. But the problem is that if you move too far away from automation, it becomes too manual again. So I moved it to a more manual process, and then I instantly noticed how it's causing bloat and slowness within the system. That's also not great. So now we can't scale our service, our revenue, because it's now too manual. So one of the big things I also had to do is try and find that balance between automation, manual intervention, manual work. Still a work in progress, but that's the second thing. So finance, getting all of those things incorporated. Two is automation process, and I think the third angle was definitely people, human resources. It's been an extremely big learning curve. If you've never worked with people this closely, you will not understand. And I think all agency founders, owners, operators will understand this. You get good employees, you get bad employees, you get the middle layer that's okay. Everybody wants more money. Everybody wants to do fewer work, more training, more this. Clients complain, clients are happy. It's a huge mix of emotions and different personalities and different ways of using tools, systems. How did we put stuff in place there? of course, a couple of things, you know, check-ins, training, better communication amongst all people. We've given people management ownership. So I don't need to deal with all the different departments. I've got a middle layer below me that does that. So those were some of the things, but it was definitely a shock, but a big learning curve without a doubt.
It's I love your answer, by the way. I think especially for COOs who are just starting in a new place, in a new agency, I think you have so many different fields that you need to look into in order to map everything out and then decide which thing is not working or which thing is the most bloated one and you need to focus on. That it's quite
Yeah,
hard, and I work with a lot of COOs that I see that they become overwhelmed like in the first week
very much.
because they join and they're like, where do I start from? Like, how do I fix that?
How do you
If
prioritize? That's
you
correct. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It needs prioritization, but I think it's quite hard to prioritize when you need to, you're responsible to fix it, right? And then in a lot of fronts you have stuff that are not going as they're expected. If you go back to starting again in Magnet Monster, what do you think will be one priority or one main thing that you will do immediately?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think the one thing that I feel like I could have done better from the get go is to prevent any nuances from creeping in. Now,
Hmm.
nuances could be anything from onboarding to the systems to the actual role and responsibilities. But I think that was one where we left too many gray areas, and especially in our job roles, our responsibilities. We would hire people. The job description was there. It was generic in places. It was specific in other places, but we didn't necessarily, you know, ask the person, are they clear? You know, are the KPIs clear? This is how we're going to measure this. This is how we're going to do it over 30 days, 60 days, and so on. So people would start and then they would just do their job. And then after a while, I would feel like they're not hitting the mark. I would have chats with them and they would tell me that, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that was my responsibility. So that caused a lot of weirdness and friction within the agency. So if there's one thing that I would have done a lot better is to really hone in on what's the specifics, what are we expecting of them from a responsibility all the way to KPIs to everything in between, and also
Hmm.
sit down with them, spend enough time to see if they understand it and the likes, because that caused a lot of troubles for us in the past. Yep.
I love it. I think we're very aligned here because the first thing that I do when I start working with an agency is to map their end-to-end process with who is doing what. And I think it's
Yeah.
exactly what you mentioned, because for me this gives me so much. It gives me a sense of, I understand who needs to do the different stages, and speaking with people, I understand what they're actually doing, and that's how I identify bottlenecks and gaps, and that's gold.
Exactly
Then
that.
when you fix this, it's much easier with everything else.
I think you're nailing it because we don't always step back and map it at a high level because we
Yeah.
are so in the thick of things. You know, that stepping back is mostly missing. Yep.
It's very interesting because stepping back is missing because people are so much into,
Yeah.
oh, I need to fix it now, and then there's so much going on that you just don't have. I feel like people don't have this time to step back and just breathe and spend some time to map the process. But just this
Correct.
morning I was I was mapping one end-to-end process for an agency, and it took me maybe an hour to map it, the whole process. And then I was like, wow, it's an hour that can save you so much after that. So it's very interesting how our brain works, right? We don't have time to stop and to do it, but then we're losing a lot more
Correct.
time later on if we don't do it.
On the money. I think you're nailing it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. So As we understood, and if I can put an analogy here, I think running an agency is like spinning plates. You have spinning plates in every single hand, and there's so much going on at any single time. How did you balance making sure that clients are happy and you're building systems that can scale?
Yeah, that's a good question. Look, and anyone can hate me for this, and that's okay. Hate me for it. But clients first. Revenue, they pay they pay our salary, or they pay our salaries. So whatever we do, the first priority is anything that touches the client, be it the quality of the work, be it the speed at which we work, be it at meetings we need to have with them, if it's a weekly check-in. So we always ensure that whatever we do on the client end is established, it is oiled. We have people available to attend to client communication at rapid speed. We also do check-ins to see, is there satisfaction amongst, our biggest retainers. Of course, we score them based off of their revenue contribution into the business. The higher the revenue contribution, of course, the bigger the priority on them, for obvious
Yeah.
reasons. So that's always top of mind, is we need to nail that down constantly. Does it slip through the cracks? Of course. I mean, we're all human. So that side, we've got dedicated people to attend to that side of the business. We also have a lot of touch points with clients. A lot of the times agencies will stream everything through an account manager. We've got 3, 4, 5 points of contacts with the client on that side. The reason why we did that is because then at least we know, A, we can communicate and respond in speed. Two, there's always someone available that can jump in, get their hands dirty, get it solved. And when someone goes on leave, if something happens to them, at least we've got people with, the intel into those conversations. So that's the first thing that we did prioritize. No questions asked. Now, like you say, the second thing is, how do you then balance it out with operational stuff? That's an interesting one because, man, that's always a priority, and the one goes with the other. It's like that horse and carriage vibe. The one critical thing that we do in Magnet Monster is we set OKRs each quarter. So each manager or leader needs to own a set of OKRs. So we try and streamline it, hone it into specific projects or rocks OKRs, just so we don't have millions of things running at the same time and we feel like we're getting pulled into different directions. So OKRs, and we each own a piece of it. So what we do is we bring a ton of OKR ideas to the table, mini projects, as you want to call them, and then we all vote on it. What is the priority within the business? What is the revenue potential? Does it solve any immediate problems within the business? We need to pitch it to one another, to
Yeah.
to the different leaders. We all then get a chance to vote for it, and the one with the most votes, we usually pick about 3, 4 per quarter, and we just really, really hone in on that particular one because we know that we're all in agreement here, we're all in alignment. And they usually go span across marketing, sales, operational stuff, recruiting, hiring. We try and spread it across a set of principles or areas within the business. That's how we try and balance it out. Is priority is always client stuff, no matter what. And on the
Yeah.
second hand side, we do OKRs so we can just streamline it a little bit, and it's a little bit more measurable. Yep.
This is very, very interesting. And I think it's pretty unique how you do it. I asked you this question because I believe it's quite hard to balance between clients being happy and at the same time building systems that can scale. And what exactly within the agency you need to focus on, which systems.
Correct.
And I
Yeah.
think what you're doing is absolutely brilliant because as leaders you can discuss and decide what's with priority for the next quarter. And do you think this or anything else is what makes Magnet Monster so successful?
I think there's a combination of things that helps us being so successful. Now, the first one is without a doubt, even if you look away from operational stuff, finances, I think is our reputation. A lot of agencies out there come to us and they want some guidance on, ooh, you guys are so well known and you're the leaders in the field. It took 6+ years for us to build up that reputation amongst our peers, amongst our partners, our prospects and clients. It's not an overnight thing. There's just no way.
Yeah.
And then secondly to that is definitely there's an element of operations. But again, operations can be subjective because what works for us might not work for the next person or the next agency. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it's contributing to our visible success, but of course it does have an influence on how we can scale the team structure, team dynamic, how it's an open culture. In other words, we've got 8, 9 people working on one account, and they all collab with one another. So they're feeding one another with info bits and training and development. So if I can't develop my people because I'm only one guy, at least I've made the communication line and the collab space so dynamic and interactive that if I'm not attending to their development, they're kind of feeding one another. So in essence, it is definitely contributing to the success of the agency. And then also it also establishes a good culture. We've got a very good employee retention rate, and it's quite a long period as well. So people want to work for us. They want to work within the in the company as well. So I think all of this contributes to that, correct? Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. You said that it's been 6+ years that obviously you've been building to get to the level of success you're now. How
Yeah.
does the DNA of Magnet Monster change over time since you started? We can speak about from that point onwards.
I think it's an interesting question in the sense that at the heart of an agency, a business, the DNA will always remain the same. You need
Hmm.
to be profitable, you need the system to work, you need clients to be happy. So all those things kind of remain the same between now and forever. But some of the things that does definitely change is there's different seasons within the agency. When I started, and this is nothing against like my effort or the team. When we started, I was extremely involved in day-to-day stuff, and I absolutely loved it. And the impact I had on people was great because whatever I do as an implementer and as an on-the-ground person, they look up at me like, wow, okay, we're actually learning from you. Transitioning into a leadership role, you kind of get removed from the day-to-day stuff. So it almost feels like you are losing that connection with your ground level people because now you've got managers that's handling that layer or that function within the business. So DNA kind of shifts from between different people. Adam also moved out of the CEO role and I stepped into that role. So that also changed the DNA within the team. He also
Yeah.
got less involved in day-to-day stuff, speaking with clients and the likes. So the DNA just shifts between different people, I'll be honest with you. So the core foundation is still there. It just shifts amongst different people. And it's interesting to navigate that because some people find it hard to adjust. For instance, I mean, I'll be candid here and transparent. So when Adam moved out of the CEO role, it almost felt like you almost lost that family member because wow, I've been chatting with Adam on a daily basis and he's been sharing ideas and thoughts. All of a sudden he's ripped out of that and there's a new person fulfilling that. They've got different ways of approaching it. Like Adam is a lot softer. He's got a lot more sympathy for people and problems and challenges. I'm a little bit on the rougher end and I don't always have patience for these things. So that DNA shifts a little, and people need to adapt to it and understand that's kind of how it works now. So that's kind of how I think it happens. That evolves and everything along, but it's very difficult because DNA is a funny thing because those shifts can disrupt things. People might be unhappy, people might be happier, people take more chances, they take less chances. So It's really in the fiber of the agency, these things.
Absolutely. About the DNA, I'm on the same point with you. And actually, because you mentioned that you became the CEO at some point when Adam moved away from it, can you tell
Yeah.
me, as a CEO, what are some of the challenges you're basically covering now that feel completely different from the challenges that you were facing as a COO? I'm trying to
Yeah.
understand what's the fundamental difference between the two roles.
Mm. So it's a nice question, just because it is a, I think for most, I think agency founders, they are in this position from the get go.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what they know. But like you say, when you move from operations to like a CEO role, it feels extremely, it feels awkward, just because when I was in the operational role for about 3 years, I had a very set way of doing things. And like I would step in the morning, I would do X, afternoon, I would do Y. And my output is, I can see my output. I need to improve a process or a template or something. Improve it, implement it, people are running with it. Great. There's a sense of accomplishment. Where as a CEO role, it's so weird because there's no one thing that you handle. You're almost trying to define what is your task really, because you run from the smallest of things, like, oh, gosh, we need to get some social media out, some social posts, or we need to work on, getting our ads out, all the way to hiring and recruiting, because we don't have a PR agent, PR, specialist or outsourcing agency, all the way to the client's a little bit unhappy, all the way to, oh, we need to speak to this person. Oh, this person wants a raise, so we need to look at the finances. So it kind of feels like you're just running from left to right, I'll be honest with you. And the worst thing about it is that you can't necessarily at the end of the day see, oh wow, okay, I worked on this process, this system, and end to end I can see I've ticked it off and it's done. You always kind of just scrambling around, running around. And then on top of that, you also get this notion of like, you need to set the vision for the company and like what's next, growth. And you think to yourself, well, isn't it enough just to stabilize what we're currently doing? Do we constantly need to chase what's next, what's growth? What does the growth look like? Is it more clients, new services, more revenue, a different vertical? Like, what is that? So it's an extremely weird position to be in, just because you just don't measure, you can't just measure your daily output and focus in a very linear fashion. So that's been the biggest challenge for me, is to honestly know today I'm going to do this and not get distracted. That's been the biggest challenge. Yep.
Yeah. Maybe we can systematize that and say that it's the deliverables, right? As a COO, you have your deliverables, you deliver on that, you see the improvements kind of straight
Yeah.
away, and you receive that fulfillment. As a CEO, it's quite harder to set these deliverables, something
Correct.
that is measurable immediately and you can see the
Yeah.
change happening now.
Correct. 100% that. 100% on the money. Especially because as a CEO, it's not, you can't exclude yourself from certain conversations. Where as an operational person, you can say, you know what, that's not really my, for instance, sales marketing, I was able to shut myself away from that. Like, look, I need to focus on people operations. I'm not going to focus on sales leads. Now all of a sudden it's like you've got this wide pool of things that you need to get involved in, so you are nailing it. It's tricky.
And because you mentioned seasons before that, but I moved away from it. How would you define the seasons within an agency? And do you think it's different how the CEO and the COO and the team feels in the different seasons?
You know, I mean, seasons, a lot of people think you can, very much lock in and define the seasons, and you go through a crawling phase where you're working on your processes and systems, and then you get to a maturity level, and then you get to a expansion level, or whatever you want to call it. I don't necessarily think there's clear seasons, just because there's so many things that gets changed and disrupted. I mean, the big conversation always will be AI. I've actually established, very good SOPs for the business. And then there's new technology that creeps in, new ways of doing it. And then all of a sudden, all those SOPs are outdated, useless, can't really use them because things move so quickly. All of a sudden, we're plugging our stuff into ChatGPT. Now, my process and workflow and SOPs are quite outdated and slow.
Mhm.
So I feel like in a dynamic agency, you don't really have set seasons because it's constantly, today it can be a sunny season, summer, everything is great. Tomorrow, winter comes and we've just lost our biggest client. A good example is, so over November, December, Black Friday period, our sales pipeline is a lot slower compared to the rest of the year. Then what happens is Jan comes and you all of a sudden you sign three, four, five deals. Now you need to again handle onboarding, four or five clients at the same time. And it's not like you've got hundreds of staff members just sitting there waiting, ready to take on clients. You're obviously trying to, keep your margins healthy. So now you need to shift and move about. Where just in November, December, we had thinking time. Now Jan is here, and now it kind of disrupts. So I wouldn't say there's seasons, to be honest with you. There's also other moments where you think you are mature and you've established things, and then a new agency would enter and they disrupt the industry, or it
Yeah.
becomes saturated. Now, what's new? How do you differentiate yourself? So it's ever changing. It's just extremely dynamic, which is what keeps us going, but it's also what makes us gray and have all these wrinkles underneath our eyes. Yep.
You look pretty good. For what you've passed
Thank
through,
you.
you look very, very good. um,
Appreciate it.
Maybe it's the camera, you
Yes.
don't have these wrinkles below the eyes. Um,
Maybe.
eh, maybe. I actually want to get you to the SOPs because you mentioned something very interesting that you implement some kind of SOPs and then something comes on the market, let's say ChatGPT, although it's not very new anymore, and it disrupts the SOPs that's been created. Can you give me something from the kitchen of Magnet Monster? How do you guys approach that with outdated information and outdated documentation?
Yeah. I mean, SOPs will always be a challenging task. We are trying to, the biggest problem, as I've said, is it instantly creates bloat. So I've realized that even though, because SOPs, you're trying to be thorough with it, not miss a beat, make it clear, make it understandable. And then within that, you potentially create some bloat and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then something like ChatGPT comes along and you can pretty much just plug something into it. It does all the heavy lifting for you, spits it out, and off you go. So I think that's been the biggest one, is figuring out which SOPs are still relevant, useful for the business, which ones can we transition over, which ones do we need to change, how do we actually get people to use SOPs, because that's been always the biggest challenge, is how do we get people to use the SOPs, how do we get people to access them, because constantly you hear people say, where's this, where do I find this, like, okay, it's here, and the next person organizes the SOPs in a different area, so now you've got it in a Google Drive, the next person moves it into ClickUp or Asana, the next person moves it into Notion, and it's like, oh my goodness me, where do we find this? So I think it's just trying to figure out how to make it accessible, how to make it dynamic, how to make it less bloated. It's been a challenge for us in that particular regard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you guys do? Do you review the SOPs and the documentation ongoing basis, let's say it that way, or you have every quarter, every month, whatever is the time frame, specific slot when you look at this documentation?
Unfortunately, no. I think that is something that would be quite a luxury to have,
Mm.
just because we are so, part of the day-to-day stuff. If one of our employees, resigns, I'm scrambling and trying to, find a replacement for them, rather than, oh wow, okay, let me take my sweet time to go over, the SOPs to figure out what's outdated, what's not. So it's very much, and I'm being transparent here, we don't have it all figured out. It's a case of you do it once in a batch every now and again, and then it kind of sits there. We do have a prompt at the bottom of each SOP for, if someone has a question or if they want to give an update or change request on it. People don't really use it. But no, we don't check it on a ongoing basis. We are trying to build something that's more dynamic within ChatGPT, just because
Yeah,
we want a wiki that you can rather ask the wiki, and that wiki could potentially keep things updated in the background. I don't know how that works, but we're trying to just throw everything to the AI and go, you organize it for us, you spit out the results, and you also enrich it as you see fit. So we're hoping for something like that.
got it. Got it. Okay, as we are moving towards the end of this podcast, I actually have a very interesting question for you. And it's
Yeah.
around leadership. You've been on not just on one leadership position. And I know that leadership isn't static. It grows as you as person grow. How do you think you have evolved as a leader over the years? And what do you think are the most important qualities for someone trying to scale a fast growing agency like Magnet Monster?
Sure. It's an interesting question, but I think the one area that I've been extremely bad at as a leader, well, an early leader and now a little bit more senior, or seasoned, I think I've always been very, how can I call it, one track minded, or I don't want to believe there's different personalities and people operate in different ways. So back in the day when I really started in operational role, I always had these demands of everybody should speak up, everybody should bring stuff to the table, everybody should contribute, everybody should present, make it dynamic, make it alive, just because I almost want people to fit into my thinking as a leader and how I, want this to run and function. And there's merit to it because, as a leader, as a specialist in something, you kind of know what works and what triggers clients happiness and the likes. And then over time I had to go through the realization of, guess what, not everybody is gonna, raise their hand on calls and contribute to things. Not everybody is comfortable recording a Loom video on the fly. Like I can record 20 Loom videos within the next hour, no problem. And I would probably only, re-record 5 of them. So you're questioning, why can't people just record a quick little Loom video, get it done, and just send it over to me? Some people take hours on a single one. So I think that part started, you know, changing within me as a leader, is kind of understanding the dynamic of people, different personalities, and how to approach them. Am I solid in that area? Am I a master at it? No, just because I am a strong personality type. So I would always, roll my eyes when I see, people's behavior and go, why the hell aren't you doing it? But I think that part has kind of matured to some extent. You said, well, what other traits should leaders have? I think
Yeah.
a couple of them. I think a resilience is a no-brainer. The amount of responsibility, people look at you and they almost see you as this statue. I mean, you can't break. I mean, you can't have doubt. You need to have all the answers. You can't show any fear or doubt, those type of things. And that's all down to resilience and composure. Because if I'm going to crack, my team is going to stress because they're going to think, wow, are we breaking down here? Or is it the end of the agency? A couple of other things, I think definitely communication is also a key one. Is it's really communicating things. Communication is a good one. A second one is passion and interest and drive. I think a lot of leaders kind of lose that after a while. It's so hard. Even myself, sometimes I feel like, because I'm not part of the day to day exciting stuff, this is a little bit vanilla and boring. So you almost need to find ways to bring yourself back and find that passion and bring yourself back. I've heard many stories of CEOs and founders that just kind of just runs dead. They just run out of that passion and motivation. So you need to find ways to make it exciting for yourself, and that's a trait to have. And then I think
Absolutely.
the fourth one I'd probably say is, I think an obvious one is, you need to know how to dictate. Learn how to shed some of these things. Like I've always been, because my personal, the rose palm, they do it themselves. They get their hands dirty. They don't wait for people. They do it themselves because I can do it 10 times faster than most people, kind of thing. So I constantly need to go, hang on a second, yeah, you can outsource that, or you can, give it to someone else. And when you do it, it gets done so much faster and you can focus on other stuff. So at the point where you are done with your thing, they're also done with this thing. And then all of a sudden you've got everything completed by, a quicker deadline. So that's another trait which I believe a lot of founders and CEOs struggle with. They struggle to just give over for good reason. For good reason.
More
Yeah.
like delegation, right?
Delegation. What did I say? Dictation, delegation.
Yeah.
Delegate, know when to call in support, and so on. Yeah, delegation.
I will add a fifth one to what you said because I see it as a very common thing that people in leadership positions are not having it or not realizing that they need to have it, and then this creates a lot of problems within the agency. Is basically, for me, the leaders need to be honest with themselves,
Honest.
what exactly is happening within the agency, and then structure some kind of a plan. And this goes to your fourth point, which is the delegation. What I see a lot is the leaders are not very honest with what's happening within the agency, and
Yeah.
they just present it as everything's fine. It can be better, but we're in a good place. And then this a lot of times stops them from growing and moving forward. And they want to move forward, they're just not honest to realize what will get them to this next step.
I'm 100% with you. I think a lot of leaders see it as a sign of showing weakness.
Yeah.
Like I can't say, like I would tell us straight up. I would tell. I look at some of the competitor agencies, and then they post, all these different frameworks, and like, ooh, we've scaled to 150,000, USD, revenue per month by following this and that. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? We don't have everything figured out. There's no way. And I'm sure you guys don't have it figured out. There's no way. Because if I
Yeah.
don't have it figured out, chances that you've got it figured out. But I'll be honest with people. And I'm like, listen, it's a bit of a mess in this area, or it needs refinement. Yeah. And by doing that, at least, now we can attend to it. And now we're human about it, as opposed to, like you say, not showing, that you're struggling or certain things are broken. So you are right. People need to be a lot more honest in leadership roles. I think it will help everybody involved. Yeah. Good point.
Absolutely. And that's why I really like you, and I really like your personality, because you like speaking up. And I appreciate
Nah,
that.
appreciate it.
I'm a little bit
Appreciate it.
like yourself as well, and for me it's so much easier to work with people who are like that. Johan, that has been an incredible conversation. I really enjoyed it. I'm absolutely sure that our listeners are going to enjoy it as well. And they will be walking away with a lot of valuable information and maybe ideas after listening this podcast. And I would like us to do something else for them. I asked you to prepare something valuable that you would like to give away. So, can you tell me a little bit more? What are you bringing with you digitally? And why do you think this is an important thing that you would like to give away to other leaders, agency owners, and people who work within agencies?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a agency health score audit sheet that I've created back in the day when I was more involved in operations. It's basically a scorecard in Google Sheets that covers four key areas within an agency. It spans from finance to hiring, recruitment, service delivery, and so on. And within each of these subjects, there's a couple of sub items to check, and you just basically score yourself. You like you say, honesty. Score yourself out of 10 in each of these areas. And then what it allows you to do is it allows you to look at the areas of weakness. But the beauty about the sheet is it's got a column for priority. How
Hmm.
important is it for us, as well as a rating score. So if you rate it 2 out of 10, but it's got an important score of 10 out of 10, then that's a clear signal and indicator to you as an operational person or agency founder that this is important and we're scoring low in that area. So this sheet just kind of helps you to visualize parts of that so you can better prioritize your focus areas.
Amazing. And thank you very much for bringing that with you. So for everyone who
Absolutely.
wants to get their hands on this spreadsheet, head over to the description and follow the steps, and you will get the
I mean,
pulse checker spreadsheet delivered straight to your inbox. I believe this is everything from us today. Yuhan, once again, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining me and being so honest. And I believe you spoke from your heart and you shared a lot. What I also noticed is that you shared stuff that you said that you're not that good at, but you realized them and you spoke very openly about it. And I believe we need more people like you.
appreciate your time and thanks for all the questions. And I hope that people out there at least found some golden bits amongst it. And feel free
Yeah.
to send me DMs. I'm open to have a chat with anyone that is in a similar position or is looking to transition into a more leadership role. So thanks for having me. It was good chatting with you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Cheers. Thanks.